John Lennon can't be dead.
4 cops pulled John Lennon out and put him into the back of a police car, and he was bleeding from his mouth, and it was a terrible sight.
On the morning of December 8th, 1980, John Lennon did a photo shoot for Rolling Stone magazine with his wife, Yoko Ono. Later that afternoon, they departed their building where they were greeted by a fan who wanted their autograph. Lennon signed the copy of his most recent album, Double Fantasy. Then, John Lennon and his wife came here to the record plant to record Yoko Ono's single, Walking on Thin Ice.
Walking on thin ice, I'm paying the price.
They spent most of the day and evening here. Just after 10 p.m., they got into a car and returned home. It would be the final time John Lennon would ever step foot inside a record studio.
They stepped out of the limousine and they went inside the gate there, and then all of a sudden they heard 5, 6 shots, and that was it.
When they returned back home later that night, the same fan that asked John Lennon for an autograph pulled out a gun and shot him in cold blood in the vestibule of his building.
Mr. Chapman came up behind him and called to him, Mr. Lennon, as he arrived at that doorway. And then in a combat stance, he emptied the Charter Arms .38 caliber gun that he had with him and shot John Lennon.
Police responded to the scene right away, and when they saw the amount of blood coming from Lennon's body, they knew they could not wait for an ambulance. They took him and put him in the back of a cop car and went directly to the hospital. They also arrested the shooter, Mark David Chapman, on the scene.
Well, it was about 10:30 in the evening, and we were parked, my partner and I were parked at the corner of 72nd Street and Amsterdam Avenue, and we heard a call come over the air of possible shots fired near the Dakota. We saw a few people standing around, everybody kind of frozen. My partner got out, he ran to one side, and I came around from the other side, and some fellow was coming to me at the same time, and he said to me, "Officer, be careful, somebody's shooting a gun in there. They're firing off shots." And that's when I realized that we had the real thing happening. We didn't see Lennon at that time. And I said to Jose, the doorman who I knew, I said, "Jose, what's going on here?" And he pointed in the direction of this fellow with the overcoat on. And he said, "He just shot Lennon." So I said to my partner, Steve, I said, "Steve, stay with this guy. Put him up against the wall." I went inside and I saw Lennon lying face down on the rug, and he was bleeding profusely. I hollered out to Steve, "Steve, we got a real shooting here. Better cuff that guy." He actually was fairly polite. I turned to him and I said, "You know, you just threw your whole damn life away." Chapman started talking about a little person inside of him and a big person inside of him. The big person has been winning the battle up to now, but tonight the little person won the battle.
John Lennon was brought to Roosevelt Hospital, which is Mount Sinai Hospital today. Hospital staff at the time were notified that they had a gunshot victim that needed immediate attention. According to doctors, John Lennon was shot 4 times in the chest, with 3 of the bullets exiting his back.
The first thing I remember that was a little out of the ordinary is they paged me overhead to the ER, which they usually don't do. They would call your beeper, you'd respond, answer the beeper, they give you the name or message, whatever. The other thing that was unusual, he did not show up by ambulance. He showed up by police car. He was in the back of a cop car. He gets put on the stretcher, wheeled down the hall. He's wearing his brown leather jacket with a little fur collar. He had blue jeans on, track shoes, and a red t-shirt with Oriental print on it. Opened his chest and started giving internal cardiac massage. The heart itself was intact, and the vessels above the heart were what were injured, and we worked on them. We didn't know who he was, we just worked on him. And you get into a rhythm. You start pumping the heart, people are doing their thing, and then someone starts going through his belongings. And it's at that point someone says, his driver's license, and I remember seeing a gold American Express card that said John Lennon. And up before that, someone said, "Hey, that looks like John Lennon," and I said, "No, that's not John Lennon. It's like doubting Thomas. It couldn't possibly be John Lennon." And then they brought out his stuff, his ID. It is John Lennon. And that's when I had my OMG moment.
After 30 minutes of trying to save his life, doctors pronounced John Lennon dead.
By that time, the ER director, Dr. Lynn, had been called. Once they found out who it was,
John Lennon was brought to the emergency room at the Roosevelt site, St. Luke's Roosevelt Hospital, this evening, shortly before 11 p.m.
I mean, it affected me. Not the fact that I held his heart in my hands or operated, but the fact that he died, I think, affected me more than anything else. For the next 3 days, I couldn't listen to radio, watch TV, read a newspaper. It was all John Lennon and just reminding me of the few nights before. And there's a lot of hindsight, second guessing. What if he wasn't so severely injured? Was there anything he could have done more? I think everything was done correctly. He was, as I said, gravely injured. But it's still, you still feel somewhat responsible. It still gnaws at you. You know where you're in certain moments in your life, and obviously I have not forgotten this one.
Yoko Ono, who was inside the hospital, was given the sad news by doctors that her husband had passed away. She was then placed in the back of a cop car and given a police escort where she returned home to the Dakota. But at that point, word had gotten out that John Lennon had passed away, and the building was mobbed with fans from all over. In 1985, Yoko Ono and then New York City Mayor Ed Koch dedicated part of Central Park to John Lennon's memory. Ono, who still lives in the Dakota, overlooks the area known as Strawberry Fields, where she can see fans sing her husband's songs, lay flowers, and celebrate his memory.
There's no telling just what music the world has been deprived of with him not being here.
It would be nice to think what he would have done at 75. The fact that I'm doing any talking about this is even more impressive, since what we did was it's a fly speck of history.
We handled criminals every day. But I do think that night that it was a night in history, and I was a part of it.
John's spirit, in a way, is still alive in people's heart, you know, and the statements he made, the music he made, you know, it's going around the world. So in a way, it's like he's alive.